This has to be with my husband's consent. And the program is still ongoing. It will end at the end of the month. At the beginning, when I started this project, I researched information on this topic and then had 10 patients arranged. I observed the viruses in their bodies and found that the replication and mutation speed of HIV virus was faster than I had imagined. After the human immune system recognizes the virus, it will produce antigens to attack the virus. But by the time the antigens are produced, the virus has already mutated. Then it becomes a vicious cycle. Later, the immune system is damaged and the reaction becomes slower and slower, while the replication and mutation of the virus is still very fast. And finally, the immune system collapses completely. The three of them listened attentively, and I spoke slowly, just as a casual chat in general. It's about strengthening the human immune system to allow the immune system's recognition speed of the virus to exceed the virus's replication and mutation speed. At the time, we developed the drugs based on this approach. The development approach of the vaccine is slightly different from that of the drugs. The HIV virus mutates randomly, without any pattern. It also took a lot of effort at the time. Professor Su, you're really amazing. Elder Zhang looked at me with a shocked expression. Don't be like that. I waved my hand helplessly. Let's not talk about this. Let's talk about something else. I was a bit scared of Elder Zhang's expressions of astonishment. At this moment, the comments in the live stream started to surge again. Professor Su is too modest. It's hard to imagine that someone who conquered two major global diseases is so modest. If it were me, I'd probably be outrageously arrogant. I like this kind of Professor Su. Indeed, he's modest, but people with strength, they're still arrogant deep down. If someone says Professor Su is not as good as them in their professional field, I bet Professor Su's arrogance will show. Awesome, my man. Speaking of which, there are millions of people in our live stream. Has anyone here ever had AIDS? Just at this moment, some people started posting comments. I've had it. It's not a big deal. Anyway, it's already cured. More tears than words. 10 years ago, I went out to play and met a very proactive beauty. I thought my luck with women had arrived. Later, I found out that the woman was an AIDS patient, out to get revenge on society. If it weren't for Professor Su, I would be ruined this life. My experience is similar to the person above. I advise everyone to be careful when going out. If you're not very handsome and you're not very rich, and you meet someone you haven't known for long, especially a woman who is very proactive towards you, you really have to be careful. But remember, now that AIDS can be cured, it doesn't matter much anymore. You guys are considered lucky. I was even more unlucky. I went to an internet cafe to play, and just after sitting down, I felt like something exploded. I stood up and saw a bloody needle. The million people in the live stream suddenly fell silent, one by one looking at those who have had AIDS. Salute to Professor Su, as a few people posted, salute. Many people started to follow suit. The live stream started flooding again in the control room. The assistant exclaimed, way. Your husband is too amazing. At this moment, Elder Zhang's phone suddenly rang in the live stream. Elder Zhang looked at the phone and answered the phone with a serious expression. Director Zhang. The person on the other end said, Director Zhang, the confidentiality agreement you signed 4 years ago, the information can be released now. Elder Zhang responded, okay, I understand. Just after Elder Zhang hung up the phone, Zhang Yu's phone also rang. Zhang Yu also walked to the side with a serious face and answered the phone. 2 minutes later, after Zhang Yu hung up and just sat on the sofa, my phone rang again. I saw Director Zhang on the phone, then got up and went aside to answer it. Director Zhang on the other end went straight to the point. Professor Su, the matter of conquering cancer and AIDS no longer needs to be kept confidential. Hearing this, I frowned and said, do these two things need to be officially released now? Director Zhang replied, wait until October 1st, and it will be officially released in the media. Elder Zhang looked at me at this time. The superiors just called me, saying that the matter of you conquering cancer can be spoken about. The confidentiality agreement is invalid. Hearing this, Shen Zhao's expression suddenly changed and looked at Elder Zhang in shock. Cancer was conquered by Professor Su. Elder Zhang chuckled. Professor Su conquering cancer. Zhang Yu and I already knew about it, but if you hadn't come today, I'm afraid I wouldn't have known that AIDS was conquered by Professor Su. At this moment, the fans in the live stream also started chatting. They saw the three of us receiving calls one after another and heard about confidentiality agreements, etc. The fans all realized that before this, Susie's identity had to be kept secret. Director, you seem to have gotten into big trouble before. Professor Su didn't tell Wei Wei about conquering cancer and AIDS, probably because Professor Su also signed a confidentiality agreement. Now that the program is being live-streamed in its entirety, Professor Su, your program team is really in big trouble. Professor Su, your program team is really in big trouble. Speaking of this kind of matter, how many years will the director be sentenced? The live stream's discussions made the director's face turn pale. The secretary on the side, seeing the comments, also realized the seriousness of the matter. Didn't they just say that these two things don't need to be kept confidential anymore? It should be okay, right? Seeing the director and secretary being frightened, Wei couldn't help but comfort them. But she didn't really know. I'm going out to smoke. The director walked out of the control room with a pale face after lighting a cigarette. He called the investor. The investor on the other end answered the call immediately. The director said with a trembling voice, "Mr. Su, are you watching the live stream?" Mr. Su said in a calm tone, "I've been watching the live stream, it's nothing big." Professor Su's matter was previously within the scope of confidentiality, but didn't they just say that? The confidentiality agreement ends here, I'll take care of the rest. The director asked with uncertainty, "Are you sure it's okay? We're live streaming the president of Wudaoku and to chairman of Stay-Toned Enterprises." Mr. Su still said calmly, "I'll take care of this matter. You just do your job well." Director Zhang still didn't feel reassured and said through gritted teeth, "Mr. Su, please give me some reassurance, Mr. Su." On the other end of the phone was silent for a while and said, "This matter is approved by the superiors. The superiors want to increase Professor Su's popularity through live streaming. I understand, Mr. Su," the director said excitedly. Mr. Su reminded, "Don't make this public. I'm telling you. Is because the superiors just gave permission? The superiors have their own considerations. We just need to obey." The director's face brightened. "Mr. Su just got permission from the superiors. Doesn't that mean the superiors are right next to Mr. Su?" The director quickly said, "Don't worry, I won't tell anyone. I'll do my job well." The director, after hanging up the phone, let out a sigh of relief. He felt unprecedentedly relaxed. His original worries completely disappeared. After returning to the control room, the secretary looked at the director worriedly. "Director, will anything happen?" The director smiled and said, "I just called the investor." Mr. Su said, "It's okay. If Professor Zhu's identity cannot be made public, then we're done for. Since Professor Zhu's matter no longer needs to be kept confidential, we'll be fine too." In the live stream, the four of us were chatting while eating. Zhang Yu looked at me and asked a question that he had in mind. "Professor Su, when you took on the AIDS project, did you develop the special drug or the vaccine first?" Zhang Yu's curiosity was reasonable. Normally speaking, if the drug to cure AIDS is successfully developed, then there's no need to develop the vaccine anymore. Elder Zhang also looked at me curiously at this time. I said with a chuckle, "I developed the drug first, and the vaccine later. Logically speaking, there's no need to develop a vaccine after developing the drug. At the time, I wanted to develop a vaccine also to challenge myself, and also to make more money. Elder Zhang and Zhang Yu were a bit puzzled. "Can't you make money with the cure?" At this time, Shenzi said with a smile, "Think about it. The situation when the drugs and vaccines were launched back then, the situation, at that time, under the pretext that the AIDS drugs were difficult to mass produce, the drugs could only be supplied domestically first, while the AIDS vaccine could be mass produced on a large scale. The vaccine could be supplied globally first." Elder Zhang and Zhang Yu suddenly understood after the news was released that year. The first thing they got was skepticism from the world. But as one patient after another was cured, the haters also shut their mouths. From that day on, people all over the world were demanding Westlake Pharmaceuticals to mass-produce AIDS drugs. And Westlake Pharmaceuticals directly released an announcement that several ingredients in the AIDS drug were difficult to extract and could not be mass-produced. It would only be supplied domestically in Dragon Country for 10 years. But the AIDS vaccine could be produced in large quantities. Although foreign countries didn't believe this, there was nothing they could do. They could only settle for using the AIDS vaccine. Some people couldn't stand seeing Dragon Country make money, and they wanted to copy the vaccine through the samples they obtained. But without exception, they all failed, helplessly. The whole world started to purchase AIDS vaccines in large quantities. Elder Zhang and Zhang Yu thought of what happened that year and felt very satisfied at this moment. The audience in the live stream also thought of what happened a few years ago. That year was indeed awesome. Westlake Pharmaceuticals must have made a lot of money from the AIDS vaccine. I remember that later, the AIDS vaccine became free in the country, which infuriated everyone in the world. Yes, the country did a great job. 1.5 billion doses of vaccines were all free in the control room. The director and secretary were also very excited. Both of them had experienced the events of that year, where people in the country got the vaccines for free, 1 yuan a dose. Wei on the side also laughed. Her mood was hard to describe in words. In short, she was very happy. In the live stream, Elder Zhang and Zhang Yu both gave Shenzi a thumbs up. "You did a good job on this." Shenzi shook his head and smiled. This matter was still decided by Professor Su. I explained at the beginning, it was also because I couldn't stand them. Plus their overseas pharmaceutical companies were selling to China at higher prices. So I set the price of the vaccine at 1.0 yuan per dose. Zhang Yu then asked, "What's the cost of the AIDS vaccine?" Hearing this, Shenzi, with a wide smile, held up 3 fingers. Seeing this, Zhang Yu guessed, 30. Shenzi nodded and smiled. "The cost is 30. The profit is 970, that much." Elder Zhang looked at Shenzi in shock. The fans in the live stream, hearing Shen Zhao's words, were so shocked that they could only say, "Damn, that profit is too intense." Besides Dragon Country, there are still several billion people. Those several billion people, even if only 1/5 of them get the AIDS vaccine, that's enough to make Westlake Pharmaceuticals make a fortune. Awesome, that's freaking brilliant. Director Shen is awesome. No matter how awesome Director Shen is, he's not as awesome as Professor Su. Professor Su is still the best. Not all of the million viewers in the live stream were from Dragon Country. There were many people from other countries as well. Hearing our conversation, their faces instantly turned ugly. A vaccine with a cost of 30 yuan was sold for 1 yuan. By selling the vaccine, Westlake Pharmaceuticals made a fortune. And Westlake Pharmaceuticals is a state-owned enterprise, making them even more upset. There were even more people who were upset. They used to be people from Dragon Country, but later immigrated to developed countries in the West. When they first immigrated, they felt proud. They felt superior to others. Now that they see the country they abandoned developing so well now, they felt very uncomfortable. It was like dumping a partner, and then, years later, finding out that the other person is doing even better than you. That kind of feeling is very uncomfortable. What's even more infuriating is, after they went out, things weren't as good as they imagined. But there's no regret medicine in this world. They will never get a Dragon Country ID card again. They are just foreigners. For people in immigrant countries, they are not pure either. Most people think they are just foreigners. In the live stream, we chatted while eating. With a tendency to get more and more excited, Shenzi was a bit talkative. Plus, he drank some white wine. Once the topic was opened, he became the atmosphere maker. Shenzi smiled and said, "A few days ago, I looked at the statistics. The AIDS vaccine has sold 3 billion doses now. I think the sales are almost done. The market is just that big. I've discussed it with the company's executives and decided to stop selling the AIDS vaccine and prepared to start selling AIDS drugs." Zhang Yu asked curiously, "How do you plan to sell the AIDS drugs?" Shenzi smiled and held up 1 finger to everyone. 10.0 yuan per box to cure AIDS. You need 3 boxes of drugs. Elder Zhang pondered for a while and said, "Now that so many people overseas have gotten the AIDS vaccine, I guess not many people will buy the AIDS drugs." Shenzi nodded. "There won't be too many, but there are a lot of people with AIDS overseas, so there will still be many people buying it." Zhang Yu on the side asked curiously, "What's the cost of 1 box of drugs?" Hearing this, Shenzi chuckled. "The cost of 1 box of drugs isn't much either. 530 yuan. Elder Zhang and Zhang Yu were stunned. A cost of 530 yuan, sold at 10.0 yuan, profit over 9.0 yuan. Shenzi, seeing their expressions, smiled faintly. The drugs those overseas pharmaceutical companies sell to us have even higher profits. We only sell it for 10 yuan per box. We're already being very kind, by the way." Professor Su also participated in the pricing of the drugs. Hearing Shen Zhao's words, I chuckled and said, "I had the final say in the pricing. Although the selling price is high, but who told the overseas pharmaceutical companies to sell us drugs at such high prices? I'm a scientific researcher. Although some people say that science should not have national boundaries, I agree with that statement. But science has no national boundaries. But scientists do. I'm a scientist, but I'm also a scientist from Dragon Country." At this moment, the fans in the live stream couldn't help but start posting comments. The pricing is on point. To cure an AIDS patient, it will cost 30.0 yuan. That price should still be acceptable. If it were up to me, I would set it to 100.0 yuan per box of drugs. I remembered something from a few years ago. A drug from an overseas pharmaceutical company only cost 200 yuan, but they sold it to us for over 70.0 yuan per box. Aren't they just relying on their drug being the only one and taking advantage of us? We should just repay them in their own way. However, in the live stream, among the 700.00 people, there were also some different voices. There were a few people from overseas, hearing that the cost of the AIDS drug was so low, but the selling price was so high, felt very angry. The cost is so low, but the selling price is so high. Scientists conquer diseases. The drugs produced should be affordable. Yes, I agree. The drugs should be sold for about 400 yuan per box. Many people, seeing these dissenting opinions, couldn't help but click into their account pages and found that they were all from overseas. They couldn't help but start posting comments to fight back. Science has no national boundaries. But scientists do. Professor Su is from Dragon Country. So what if he sells it for 10 yuan per box? Why don't you think about how you sell drugs with a cost of 200 yuan? For an exorbitant price, it's only 10,000 yuan per box. What's wrong with it? Get mad. In the control room, the director, seeing this, directly blacklisted those overseas users and kicked them out of the live stream. Then he said, they've been blacklisted by me, and kicked out of the live stream. The people in the live stream, hearing this, were not happy. Why did you kick them out? We should curse them first. Curse them until we're satisfied. Then kick them out. Piss them off. Exactly. We haven't cursed it enough. Director, you're not being fair. At least wait until we've cursed it enough. Those bastards, when things aren't beneficial to them, they say that the drug prices should be lowered. If they had the special drugs, the price would be ridiculously high. Those kinds of people should be cursed. At this moment, in the live stream, Elder Zhang stood up, holding a full glass of white wine. Toast our Professor Su. Let's finish this glass. Zhang Yu also raised a full glass of white wine to toast Shen Zi. Seeing the two of them about to finish the full glass of white wine, I couldn't help but be scared and quickly dissuaded them. Don't, white wine is strong. Drink less. Hearing these words, Elder Zhang and Zhang Yu couldn't help but look at each other, and the thought of teasing Shen Zi simultaneously arose in their minds. I saw what they meant, so I decided to cooperate. So I put down my wine glass and said, drinking by the glass is not fun. How about by the bottle? Hearing this, Elder Zhang laughed heartily. By the bottle. Zhang Yu also laughed heartily. I'm going to drink 5 bottles of white wine. Hearing this, Shen Zi was incredulous. These three are drunk. They're just boasting, right? So it turns out that Professor Su also boasts when he's drunk by the bottle, and it's white wine. But who would have thought? The next second, I actually turned around and went to get 4 bottles of white wine. Shen Zhao's face turned slightly pale, but deep down, he still couldn't believe it. How can they drink by the bottle? This is white wine. Especially since he had drank with Zhang Yu. He knew Zhang Yu's alcohol tolerance. If they were to drink white wine by the bottle, Zhang Yu would at least be half crippled even if he didn't go to the hospital. Not to mention, he had already had more than 1 glass of white wine earlier. At this time, Elder Zhang and Zhang Yu each had a bottle of white wine in hand. After opening the caps, we all looked at Shen Zi, who hadn't moved. Zhang Yu looked at Shen Zi, raised an eyebrow and asked, why aren't you opening your wine? Seeing that Zhang Yu seemed serious, as if he was really going to drink by the bottle, Shen Zi still found it hard to believe. He couldn't help but suspect if Zhang Yu and the others were deliberately scaring him, so Shen Zi removed the cap. Okay, let's drink by the bottle then. Cheers. Elder Zhang and Zhang Yu laughed. Then they directly started drinking by the bottle. This scene directly stunned Shen Zi. They're really drinking by the bottle. This is too crazy. This is white wine. It's easy to have an accident if you drink too much. The viewers in the live stream, seeing Shen Zhao's stunned expression, couldn't help but laugh. Hilarious. Professor Su, Elder Zhang, and Director Zhang are so fun. The three of them ganged up to scare Director Shen. Director Shen doesn't know yet that Professor Su has developed an alcohol awakening capsule. His scared look is actually quite cute. Awesome. So Professor Su also likes to scare people. In my previous impression, I thought that scientific researchers were all very serious people. The assistant in the control room smiled at Wei Wei and said, Wei, sis, your brother-in-law is quite fun. Wei Wei chuckled and didn't say anything, just looking at her good husband. In the live stream, in just 1 minute, the three of us each finished a bottle of white wine. After putting down the bottles, we all looked at Shen Zi. Seeing this, Shen Zi said hesitantly, if I drink this bottle of white wine, especially if I drink it so quickly, I'll probably have to go to the hospital. Hearing this, Zhang Yu chuckled. It's okay, I'm here. I'll call 120 for you. Hearing this, Shen Zi was speechless. Shouldn't you be dissuading me from drinking? Seeing Shen Zhao's somewhat embarrassed expression, I couldn't help but laugh and say go ahead, drink it. You can try the alcohol awakening capsules that I developed. Alcohol awakening capsules. Hearing this, Shen Zi was a bit confused. Hearing the name of this drug, it seems to be able to make people sober up quickly. He then looked at Elder Zhang and Zhang Yu. They both looked very calm. It seemed they definitely knew about the alcohol awakening capsules, and maybe even used the alcohol awakening capsules before. No wonder they're so calm. No wonder they dared to drink by the bottle. Shen Zhao's heart stirred slightly. Alcohol awakening capsules. Professor Su even developed a drug like this. Then I'd like to experience it. The next second, Shen Zi raised his head and started drinking by the bottle. Seeing this, I took out 4 alcohol awakening capsules and gave one to each of them. Take this medicine after the alcohol kicks in and experience the effect. Shen Zi nodded. After 5 minutes, the alcohol kicked in and there was a feeling that they couldn't delay it any longer. The longer they delayed, the more likely something would happen. The 4 of them then immediately took an alcohol awakening capsule after another 10 minutes. During the first 5 minutes, the alcohol got stronger and there was no feeling of sobering up at all. But starting from the 10th minute, the body could clearly feel the effect of the drug. After another 20 minutes, Shenzi looked at me with shock. Professor Su, the effect of this drug is too strong, I said with a smile after taking this drug. In about 30 minutes, it can almost dissolve the alcohol in your body. And it can completely dissolve the alcohol in your body within 40 minutes. Hearing this, Shenzi was shocked. This Professor Su, although not old, the things he does are all very surprising. He conquered cancer, conquered AIDS, and even developed alcohol awakening capsules. If the alcohol awakening capsules can be launched on the market, the sales will definitely be very popular. And this drug has long-lasting sustainability. The viewers in the live stream, having once again witnessed the power of the alcohol awakening capsules, were all amazed. And they were also very much looking forward to the alcohol awakening capsules being launched on the market soon. I don't know when it will be launched on the market. With this, we wouldn't have to be afraid of drinking anymore. I work in the nightlife industry. You need to be able to drink in the nightlife industry. The more you drink, the more you earn. If we have this, my income would increase a lot. Alas, even if it's launched on the market, we'll probably still have to wait a year or two on the other side. In the office of the director of the Jiangnan City Public Security Bureau, Wang Zhiguo was watching the live stream at this moment. A few days ago, his superior asked him to visit Suzy and have him show up in the live stream to increase Suzy's popularity. At that time, he thought that his superiors wanted to publicly announce that Suzy had conquered cancer. Through the program's live stream, he never expected that after watching the live stream these past few days, he would find out that Suzy had so many achievements. He also understood why the Exploring the Other Half program had only just begun, and his superiors had already known the situation in the first place. A person like Suzy must definitely be under protection at all times. There must be plainclothes officers secretly protecting Suzy's surroundings. Even Wei Wei and their children, as well as Suzy's closest relatives, were all being protected at all times. Wang Zhiguo sighed in his heart. He remembered that he had signed a confidentiality agreement a few years ago. His superiors had told him proactively that cancer was conquered by Suzy at that time. It was because Suzy was going to live in Jiangnan City for a long time. His superiors had given him a task at the time, that anything related to Suzy, no matter big or small, he must do his best to solve it. At this moment, in the live stream, the four of us chatted until 5 p.m. before leaving. Elder Zhang looked at me and asked, "What are your plans for tomorrow?" I looked at him and said, "Tomorrow my wife doesn't have work, so I'll go with her to her parents' place." Elder Zhang nodded. "I originally wanted to play another day tomorrow, but since you have other things to do, then forget it." Then the three of them said goodbye and left. The house suddenly became quiet. I thought for a while, and then got up and went to the kitchen to get busy. I had to make 3 dishes before Wei Wei got home to let my wife eat something good. At 5:30 p.m., I sent a message to Wei Wei. I ordered takeout from that place. I've warmed up the dishes so that we can eat right when you get home.